You're watching our continuous coverage here from Davos 2022. I'm Shereen, Bhan, and joining me now today is a man who is going to tell us about an issue that was a vexed one through 2021. Chips and chip shortages. Hopefully 2022 brings us better news, but there are complexities and challenges that the industry is going to have to deal with. Sanjay Mehrotra, many thanks for joining us here on CNBC-TV18. As I pointed out, 2021, all that people could talk about was the chip shortage. Things have improved, but how much better has it got?
So things, like you noted, are certainly improving. First of all, let me thank you. Good to be here with you after a couple of years.
Yes.
Really good to connect here in Davos with you. Regarding the chip shortages, you know, as we have said before, that through calendar year 22, we see them improving. We expect that some of the shortages will probably still continue in calendar year 23, but the whole semiconductor industry is definitely investing a lot in terms of bringing up more production capacity as well as accelerating technology transitions. And that's what Micron has been focused on, accelerating technology transitions to meet the growing needs of the customers. And if you look at number of components that had been in shortage over the course of last year, they have improved. However, some critical shortages still remain in the semiconductor industry. Semiconductor industry equipment deliveries are also getting delayed, and that can become a risk to the supply growth within the semiconductor ecosystem in calendar year 23.
Okay, so the pain is likely to continue through 2022 and into 23 as well, but not as bad as it was in 21.
So extremely important to be vigilant in managing the supply chain, in managing your operations, maximizing your productivity, and getting maximum output from existing production. And this is what Micron has been focused on. Even before the pandemic began, Micron actually had a well-diversified manufacturing network, and we had invested in building greater redundancy in our manufacturing operations, global diversity as well, and that played out well in terms of Micron's ability to meet the growing needs for our customers. And you know, memory and storage today is everywhere, right? From data center to the intelligent edge to smart user devices, and overall demand trends, secular trend, when you look ahead over multiple years, those trends do continue to improve. So having supply chain resiliency, diversity is extremely important.
You know, you talked about investments and you talked about expansion to meet the growing demand. And I think you were at a congressional hearing with Intel's Pat Gelsinger in March. And the pitch that you're making to the U.S. government is to incentivize more production and to incentivize expansion. You're hoping that both the CHIPS Act and the FABS Act will go through. How important is it going to be for you to be able to get these two pieces of legislation through to ensure that you can expand and invest as you see the demand?
So you see, Micron is a large company, the only company in the Western Hemisphere that makes semiconductor memory and storage. Semiconductor memory and storage today is 30% of the global semiconductor industry. It is about $160 billion global industry today, expected to grow to more than $300 billion, more than $330 billion by 2030 timeframe. So as you look at the growing needs for memory and storage in today's data economy across diversity of applications, again, from cloud to autonomous vehicles that are really needing more memory in them, as well as, of course, your 5G phones and PCs. All these end applications need more memory. So meet these growing demand for memory for the remainder of this decade. To meet the 2030 era demand, more manufacturing capacity will be needed for Micron in terms of fabs. And that really requires a well-established infrastructure, but it requires cost competitiveness. We have large operations in Asia, as well as we have large operations in US, and leading a world's leading R&D facility in US at the silicon level as well. But in order to build new greenfield capacities, of course, cost structure has to be competitive. So compared to our existing operations in Asia today, cost structure in the US is about 35 to 45% more expensive for wafer manufacturing. And that's why CHIPS Act and FABS Act and these incentives are essential to really have a level playing field and to have global competitiveness in terms of the cost structure. That is always paramount in semiconductors.
So what kind of investments are we talking about as far as Micron is concerned over the next decade? You know, you talked about demand in 2030. To cater to that demand, what kind of investments will you be required to make?
So what Micron has said, we announced late last year, that we'll be investing over $150 billion over the decade in leading edge memory, semiconductor memory R&D and manufacturing. Of course, that will include investments in our global infrastructure that exists today to continue to implement technology transitions. But in the latter half of this decade, we have talked about that these investments will require a new memory, large-scale memory fab in an established ecosystem in order to meet the growing needs as well.
Okay, I'm going to pick up on the last thing that you said there, that as you look at expansion, you are going to look at established ecosystems to expand within. Now, India has just put out its semiconductor policy. You, of course, joined us virtually for Semicon 22. You already have design capabilities in India. You've got a couple of thousand people based in India, but manufacturing in India, are you ready to do that?
So we actually have 3,200 people in India, and over a short period of 3 years, we have really ramped up to 3,200 people, really strong engineers supporting various aspects of our technology and product development, leading edge work they are doing in memory. Really, a lot of work is being done in supporting our design across India as well as our global operations. I believe that is one of the fastest ramps of any company, going in a matter of 3 years to 3,200 team members today, and over time we'll grow it to even 5,000. And of course, I must congratulate India in terms of having now a policy toward investments in electronics manufacturing, including semiconductors. I think this is a great opportunity, great first step for India, because again, government support is needed in order to have a level playing field. So I think that is definitely important. So as we look at our 2030 era demand and manufacturing requirements, not only at the wafer level, but then taking the wafers, taking the chips and packaging them, assembly and test operations, which are really very valuable part and important part of being able to supply the products. These are all part of manufacturing steps. From wafer front end to assembly and test back end. These we have to evaluate our footprint over the course of 10 years. And certainly, particularly in assembly and test, there can be opportunities for us to be looking at expanding our footprint in the future. So these are opportunities that we are, of course, constantly evaluating. The pandemic has shown everybody that there is great significance to a well-diversified supply chain footprint. Micron always had that, but as we look at the needs through 2030, we may need to be expanding it further. And these are opportunities we look at. And of course, India is an important geography, important nation, willing to support the companies in this regard as well. Certainly, we will evaluate the opportunities in India as well.
The government has, of course, put out the policy, and you said it is important for governments to support the manufacturing of fab, the setting up of fab facilities. But how much is the current geopolitical alignment also likely to weigh on decisions, especially in the context of the fresh sort of friction between Taiwan and China? I mean, the over-dependence on Taiwan, is that now going to be the next big challenge?
So look, clearly, I mean, Taiwan is a big hub of semiconductors production and leading edge technology and manufacturing in Taiwan, supporting the entire global semiconductor industry. And Taiwan plays a prominent role, therefore, in global economies, as well as various national security considerations as well. So no question that, the Taiwan ecosystem for semiconductor technology manufacturing and the technology sector has to be protected in any discussions between the superpowers in the world, because the world today relies on Taiwan. But this also highlights the importance of a diversified supply chain, which, as I highlighted earlier, Micron is fortunate to have a very well diversified footprint in this regard on a global basis. And of course, again, as we look at the needs for the rest of the decade, we will continue to evaluate opportunities for further diversification and strengthening of our manufacturing footprint.
And I understand that you're already diversified and hence de-risked, but given the uncertainties globally as well as the geopolitical changes that we are seeing, does the home country advantage, even if it's less cost competitive, become a factor?
Well, Micron is headquartered out of US. The company founded 43 years ago. We have more than 50,000 patents. So we are an innovation powerhouse. And these patents have been contributed by our sites and team members worldwide, including our team members in India as well. And of course, we are headquartered out of US, but really we are a very global company. So as we look ahead at the opportunities for further expansion and diversification and resiliency of supply chain, of course, we look at opportunities of making investments at appropriate level, always intending to grow our supply in line with the industry demand. We will be looking at opportunities on a global basis and ultimately make the best decisions for long-term competitiveness and return on investments.
So, and I don't know how many people understand the complexities of actually setting up a fab facility. We know how much water gets consumed and that you need uninterrupted power supply and so on and so forth. But that's probably the most obvious ones. But, I'm sure I want to get from you, from an India perspective especially, ecosystem, of course, is one aspect. But just to be able to get started on the fab journey, what are the building blocks that we'll have to put in place?
Of course, you need a fab, construction, clean room. You need, of course, energy, power, water, all of this, and you need a successful ecosystem of all the suppliers of equipment and materials to support the ongoing production. And you, of course, need a talent pool, and you need to be able to scale it up as well. Again, Micron has a well-diversified footprint established in multiple countries with respect to our wafer manufacturing. We also have back-end assembly and test manufacturing that is also a well-established infrastructure across multiple countries. And I think India has, with this $10 billion Atmanirbhar Bharat program, I think opportunity to bring leading-edge assembly and test capabilities as well. And those assembly and test require large volume manufacturing. They require a lot of pool of talent and, of course, high-tech, smart manufacturing capabilities as well.
So you think that will be the starting point, assembly and test will be the starting point?
I think assembly and test is a natural next strong step that I think India can successfully deliver, of course, with the right level of support from the central government as well as from the state governments as well. Again, it's a good starting point, and I think this is for India. And speaking for Micron, again, we evaluate our opportunities on a global basis. We will evaluate assembly and test opportunities in India.
I want to understand from you, to get the ecosystem in place, and given your global experience, how long does it take? Is it a 5-year journey? Is it a decade journey? I mean, and I'm again trying to understand this from an Indian context because we're starting this journey now. What should we be prepared for? What's a credible roadmap?
So no question that it is a multi-year journey, of course. You start, and to scale up, it's a multi-year journey, and it absolutely requires global competitiveness. And, because that's what will ultimately bring the success as well.
So what was more challenging, 2021 or 2022? Is it looking as challenging as 21, or is it looking a little better? Because there's so many uncertainties for you as the head of Micron. What's looking most challenging?
So what I have to tell you is that market opportunities for semiconductor memory and storage are tremendous. As I highlighted earlier, growth projections are terrific, and it is absolutely exciting to see how memory truly is really enabling new frontiers of what is possible. When you look at the autonomous cars, they are becoming like data center on wheels. They have as much, level 3, level 4 cars will have as much memory and storage in them as the servers not too long ago. That's why I like to refer to them as data center on wheels. Your phones, they have so much application. They are like becoming video editing studios in your pocket.
Yeah.
That requires more memory and storage. So what's exciting is that even though we all always operate in always a dynamic, challenging environment, what's exciting is the opportunities are tremendous ahead of us. And I think Micron today, this should be noted, that is leading the world with our DRAM and with our NAND technology. We are most advanced, several quarters ahead of any other competitor with our 1-alpha DRAM, the smallest node in DRAM, as well as 176 layer stacked NAND. So Micron is really well positioned for an era of leadership in this exciting growth environment of the industries. Challenges in the business, we of course always are dealing with them, always navigating through them successfully, thanks to our 45,000 strong team worldwide.
Absolutely. So clearly demand is not a problem that you have to worry about. It's the supply side challenge that you're going to have to cope with. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us here on CNBC-TV18. Appreciate your time and we wish you the very best of luck. Thanks for stopping by here in our studio in Davos.
Thank you, Shereen.
Well, we will take a break here and continue our coverage from Davos 2022. We're back in a moment with more conversation and more guests.